You might look at the scenario that features Tom, David, Dale, and Murdoch choosing an apartment and think, oh, that's a factor rating problem. Your thoughts wouldn't be inaccurate. It is a factor rating problem, but they wouldn't be entirely accurate either, because Tom, David, Dale, and Murdoch choosing an apartment is not one factor rating problem. It's actually several different factor rating problems. I'll show you. Let's look. Tom, David, Dale, and Murdoch are 4 business students who want to rent a 4-bedroom apartment together for the fall semester. They've identified 3 factors important to them in choosing a location for their apartment: proximity to campus, cost of rent, and quality of the commons areas: pool, clubhouse, fitness facility. Right. You can kind of recognize this just by glancing at it as factor rating, because what was just mentioned here is also listed in this table. What's important? Based on the information supplied by real estate agents, the friends have rated 3 possible apartment locations on these factors, where, and this is a good thing to note, 1 means worst and 10 means best. Good to know how to interpret the scale. Oh, right. Right, you just glance at this and say, yeah, that's a factor rating problem because we're trying to pick a location, an apartment. There are the factors that are important, and the candidates already exist. That's kind of a thing with factor rating. They're looking at the Courtyard Apartments, the Garden Apartments, or La Mancha Apartments. And they've been scored on those factors. Yes, but it's several different factor rating problems, because notice that in the note frame, there's a big blank column here. Notice that something's missing: the weights. But the problem continues. While the 4 friends can agree on what factors are important, they don't agree on which of the 3 factors is more important than the remaining factors. Using a weighting scale in which all 3 factors add up to 1. Okay, that's also good to know, because there's a couple different ways of doing this, but they're using the style in which the weights have to add up to 1. Tom and David agree that the quality of the commons area is the most important factor. Tom and David agree. Quality of commons area, most important factor, and should receive a weight of 0.6. Tom and David both agree that proximity to campus should have a weight of 0.2 and the cost of rent a weight of 0.2. You know what? I better put this on the table. This information belongs on the table, but I have to remember, and that's what's kind of specific to this problem. I'm just going to write T and D. This is specific to Tom and David. All right, now, they said that what was most important to them? It was the commons areas, the pool and the clubhouse. Okay, quality of commons areas here. They give it a rate of 0.6. Weight of 0.6. Let's see. The other 2, they apparently consider equally important because they have given equal weight: proximity to campus, cost of rent. Now, wait, but there's more information. Dale, however, doesn't own a car, so he gives proximity to campus a weight of 0.75. I'd better make a different notation for Dale. Now see, this is what's kind of unusual. Proximity to campus, 0.75. What does he think about the other factors? Dale then weights the cost of rent at 0.2. Okay, so giving it the same degree of importance as Tom and David, and the quality of the commons area at almost nothing, 0.05. Now, this is the unusual part with this scenario. Generally, in typical factor rating problem, you have factors, you have locations, you have scores, and you have one set of weights, right? We have more than one set of weights in this scenario. So there's Dale's weights. What about Murdoch? Murdoch says that all 3 factors are equally important. Now, I could create, well, I guess I might as well. There's room. Murdoch. Equally important means that you're just splitting the weight. These should all have equal weights. If this all adds up to 1, it means that in Murdoch's case, the actual numerical weight would have to be 1/3, right, to split 1 up evenly across all 3. But wait. There's an even easier way to think about it. in Murdoch's case, and only Murdoch's case, because he doesn't care, he thinks that the three factors are equally important. Later, if we want to calculate any scores, all we have to do is average the data. But we'll get to that in a minute. What are the actual questions? Okay, what weighted score would Tom or David give? No, Tom or David give La Mancha Apartments. Okay, let's look at the data. Right, factor rating is based on creating weighted scores. Weighted scores are pretty simple. It's just the weight times the score plus the weight times the score plus the weight times the score. You're kind of rolling up all three of these scores according to the weight. In the case of specifically Tom and David, La Mancha Apartments, it would be 0.2 times 9, because that's the weight and the score. Whoops, that's a 9 right here. Sorry about that. That's the weight and the score for proximity to campus and La Mancha Apartments, plus again 0.2, that's the weight for cost of rent, times 8, because that's the score for La Mancha Apartments, plus 0.6, that is Tom and David's weight for quality of the commons area, times 8, because that is the score of La Mancha Apartments. I got 8.2. Oh, yeah, answers the question. That is the weighted score that those two gentlemen would give that particular location. Okay. What's the next question? What is the weighted score that Murdoch would give the Garden Apartments? I have to be careful which one, who, because there's these different weighting schemes. Which location? That one. Now, I could say 0.3333 or 1/3 times 1, 1/3 times 10 plus 1/3 times 5. I wouldn't be wrong in doing that. But remember what I was saying? If somebody does not care, all of the factors are equally important, shortcut, just average. Just average those numbers. So I want to average 1, 10, and 5. I did 1 plus 10 plus 5 divided by 3 equals like 5 and a third, 5.3333. That's his weight for that location, or excuse me, his score for that location. Which apartment location would Dale prefer? Dale. Okay, Dale. In order to answer that question, I am going to need to compute the score for each of the three. Notice we were just doing one here with the other questions. So I might as well just create a row. And this looks more like a regular factor rating study. Which one would Dale pick? Well, I don't know. What is his weighted score for Courtyard Apartments? 0.75 times 10 plus 0.2 times 7 plus 0.05 times 5. I got 9.13. Okay. Now, wait a minute. Maybe he would prefer the Garden Apartments. 1 times 0.75, 10 times 0.2, plus 5 times 0.05. Okay, probably not. I get that results in a score of 3. La Mancha Apartments, though. Also, what's the weighted score according to Dale? 0.75 times 9 plus 0.2 times 8 plus 0.05 times 8, 8.75. Now, we remember, and it's good to check, that we were originally told that 1 in the original scoring system, 1 meant worst and 10 meant best. That means that when you're looking at the finished weighted scores that you've created, the bigger numbers are better, the smaller scores are worse. Which one would Dale prefer? You're looking for the biggest number. Dale would prefer the Courtyard Apartments. Why? It's got the biggest weighted score according to his weighting scheme, the Courtyard Apartments. Which also, just intuition, Dale is the one who doesn't have a car, so proximity to campus is so important. In the Courtyard Apartments, just interpreting the data, as far as proximity to campus, it has the highest score for that. It is apparently the apartment complex that is closest to campus. So that's the one that he prefers. All right, now one last question. We're almost done. Does anyone other than Tom and David agree on which apartment to rent? Okay, this one's not going to be quite so fast as the other questions. In factor rating, what you ultimately prefer, like which apartment complex you would prefer, is really a question of what weights are you giving the factors. Tom and David give the factors all the same weights, right? That's what we were saying, T and D. That means they're going to automatically agree on which apartment complex. But the question is asking, is that anybody other than them, because we have these two other weighting schemes, does anybody other than them agree on where to rent an apartment? To answer that question, we basically have to conduct this factor rating study 3 times, because we have 3 different sets of weights, and then compare the 3 different conclusions. Now, the good news is that we're already partially done in terms of computations, because I said 3 studies. We already did 1 study, so to speak, for Dale. We also have some of the rest of it, because we could add like a row here for Tom and David, but we already calculated that score right there for La Mancha because it was an earlier question. That was 8.2. And the same thing, if we squeeze Murdoch's weighted scores here, we already found one of them. We found the one for the garden apartments, right? It was 5.33. But what we do need to do, we need to fill in those other gaps. Okay, Tom and David. No, seriously, where do they actually want to rent an apartment? Tom and David. Okay, well, what score would they give the Courtyards, the one that Dale likes so much? They would say 0.2 times 10 plus 0.2 times 7 plus 0.6 times 5. So I get that they would prefer 6.4. Okay. Then how about, I should have written it here, 6.4. I'm making a mess. Then how about the garden apartments? 0.2 times 1 plus 0.2 times 10 plus 0.6 times 5. Okay, for the garden apartments, Tom and David, I get 5.2. We already knew 8.2 for La Mancha. We knew that already. Which means if you're just talking about Tom and David, you still look for the larger score. And we see right away that Tom and David do not agree with Dale, because Dale wants to rent at the Courtyard Apartments. We already determined that. And now what we have determined is that Tom and David want to rent at La Mancha. All right, now, in order to answer the question, does anybody other than them as a pair agree? We have to see what Murdoch wants. Okay, now Murdoch, it's a little bit faster to calculate Murdoch's scores, because Murdoch doesn't care between, all of these are equally important, so just average. For the missing numbers, average 10, 7, and 5. I did that, and I got that the score for Courtyards is then, according to Murdoch, 7.33, which belongs there, but I made a mess. And then for La Mancha, average 9, 8, and 8, I get 8.33. So that is Murdoch's weighted score for La Mancha. Now look, 7.333, 5.333, 8. This one's large. Murdoch would also like to rent at La Mancha Apartments, which means that the answer is essentially yes, Murdoch agrees with Tom and David. They prefer La Mancha. So if the 4 of them are going to settle this on a vote, then the 4 of them are going to be renting at La Mancha Apartments, because 3 out of the 4 of them prefer that particular location. Hopefully Dale, who is the one dissenting vote for the Courtyard Apartments, won't be too terribly disappointed, because I just happened to notice that in terms of proximity to campus, which was so important to him, it got a 9 out of 10. So while it wasn't the absolute best one in terms of its distance from campus, apparently it's still fairly near.